Alright, my little aliens. Dork Diaries was another part of my childhood that I remember very vividly. The series truly rewired my little 9-year-old brain. I wish I could remember how I came about Dork Diaries, but unfortunately, I do not. I do remember being so obsessed with the series that I tried to write my own book that was literally a carbon copy of Dork Diaries. It was called School Days, and it was awful. But I remember coming back from school like every single day and being so excited to write in my little shitty ass book. Anyway, I love Dork Diaries. It was my favorite book series as a kid, next to Diary of a Wimpy Kid. If you missed out on Dork Diaries as a kid, 1, I'm very sorry, and 2, it's a book series that's pretty similar to Diary of a Wimpy Kid. The main character of the series is Nikki Maxwell, and she's trying to survive middle school while being tormented by Mackenzie, who is a member of the CCPs, or the Cute, Cool, and Populars. Nikki also has a little sister named Brianna, or Brianna. I don't know. It's your typical middle schooler's the main character, but they're like quirky and uncool book series. I know a lot of people know of this book, but this was my book as a kid. I wanted to relive my childhood and reread the books, and as a kid, I think I only had 1 through 4, but I wanted to up the stakes a little bit. So today, I received every single one of the Dork Diaries books in the mail, and I have to read all 15 of them in a week. Oh, I bought all 15 books. I would appreciate prayers. Much to my surprise, it didn't take me that long to get fully locked in, especially with all the little commentary from the previous owner of this book, but I was actually doing pretty well until I read the most out-of-pocket line. This line is crazy. What it is. This book was for kids. I'm done with this effing book. I didn't have as much motivation going into these 2 books as I did with book 1. It was a little more difficult for me to focus, but I just kept thinking about how badly I wanted to play Stardew Valley. So I just read through books 2 and 3, and I ended up finishing book 3 at around 6. I will say book 1 is my least favorite out of this whole bunch. Not because of the Jamie Lynn Spears line. I honestly don't care about that girl. I just feel like this is an introductory book. Like, this book it's not supposed to be a standalone book. It doesn't feel that way to me. It's very predictable, but I feel like every other children's book is. Basically, in this book, Nikki is the new girl at Westchester Country Day, and she gets her locker placed next to Mackenzie, which I already told you she is a member of the CCPs, or the Cute, Cool, and Populars. Westchester Country Day is a private school that Nikki's family can only afford because Nikki's dad is an exterminator, and him and the school have a deal. Nikki becomes friends with these girls named Chloe and Zoe, and then she quickly develops a crush on a guy named Brandon, who is the school photographer, and she describes him as... Let me find it in the book. She describes Brandon as the quiet rebel type, which I don't see at all. I will be real. The main plot of this book is that Nikki wants to enter an art competition, but Mackenzie's also trying to enter the art competition. Instead of signing up for the art competition in the office with Mackenzie there, she signs up to be a library shelving assistant. Chloe and Zoe are also library shelving assistants, and Mrs. Peach, who is the head librarian, she lets the girls know that they have the opportunity to go to New York City for National Library Week. Chloe and Zoe want to prove to Mrs. Peach that they're the perfect students to send to New York City. So in an attempt to prove that to her, they're like, we should get tattoos. Nikki draws fake tattoos for them, and then a couple of other kids see her drawing the fake tattoos, and they're all like, oh my god, we want tattoos too. So Nikki comes up with the idea of, hey, donate a book and I'll give you a tattoo. Later on, Brandon is talking to Nikki in the library, and he tells her, hey, like, you have way more talent than Mackenzie. So she's like, you know what? I'm gonna join the art competition. But when Nikki is coming into school one day, she accidentally ruins and destroys the art piece that she was gonna bring in. But her little buddies come in clutch. Do you remember those tattoos I was telling you about? They take pictures of like the tattoos or whatever, and that's Nikki's like art exhibit thing. And she ends up winning the art competition. So here are a few things that I've learned about Nikki from the first book. She likes to draw. She likes Tyra Banks. And she wants to kill her little sister. I'm moving on to Tales from a Not So Tales from a not so popular party girl. This book centers around Halloween, and Mackenzie is head of the Halloween dance party planning committee. And Chloe, Zoe, and Nikki all decide to sign up for cleanup crew. Nikki brings up that they should all dress as like trash bags for the Halloween dance. Chloe and Zoe don't like that idea because they plan on going to the dance with other people, so they don't want to wear that costume. Anyway, Mackenzie's kind of being an asshole, so all the girls decide to quit, and then in retaliation, sort of, Mackenzie decides to quit and put the cleaning crew in charge of like the whole thing. Brandon asks Nikki to the dance, and he tells her that Mackenzie asked him, but he said no. So Nikki plans on going to the dance with Brandon in a Juliet costume. Nikki's sister Brianna does ballet, and one of the ballet moms, Miss Hargrove, asks Nikki if she can face paint at the little ballet party or whatever. She's gonna get paid for it, and Nikki is money hungry, so she says yes. But it's the same day as the dance, and Nikki has to wear a rat costume to the little ballerina party thing. Chloe and Zoe's plans to go to the dance with other people kind of fall through, so they end up surprising Nikki with her trash bag costume. So they're supposed to match. Do you see the conflict? So, in an effort to like not disappoint anyone, she decides that she's gonna switch between like 3 costumes at once. While she's in the bathroom though, Mackenzie steals her bag from her, and she's left in the rat costume, and Mackenzie kind of like exposes that it's her in the rat costume. And Brandon, Chloe, and Zoe are all kind of like disappointed. They quickly get over it, and that's the end of the book. Could Nikki have told her friends her other plans? Yes. But middle schoolers are some of the dumbest people on the planet. I'm sorry if you're in middle school watching this, but y'all, you will look back and you will be like, I was dumb. I was dumb. I do like this book more than the first one, but the third one is my favorite out of this bunch. Tales from a Not So Talented Pop Star. So Nikki wants to enter a talent show with Chloe and Zoe, but Kenzie wants to do a dance number, and Chloe and Zoe are some of the best dancers in the school. So she tells Nikki, if you sign up for the talent show with Chloe and Zoe, I am gonna expose you for this thing. And the thing that she's gonna expose her for is that she has a video of Nikki and Brianna, her little sister, dancing in a pizza place called Queasy Cheesy. Nikki doesn't want anybody to see, so she's like, I'm not gonna sign up for the talent show. And they're like, hey, if you're not gonna do it, I'm not gonna do it either. But they quickly change their mind when Mackenzie tells them, hey, like, your crushes have crushes on you too. If you join my little dance team, you're gonna get to dance with them. So what do? They join Mackenzie's little dance number. While all of this is going on, the school develops a little bit of a bug problem, and I don't know if you remember me telling you earlier, but Nikki's dad is an exterminator. She's a little bit embarrassed by that. Principal calls Nikki's dad, but Nikki intercepts the phone call, and she tells the principal, hey, like, get another exterminator, cause my dad is busy. But then Nikki gets a letter in the mail of a tuition bill, and they ended up revoking her scholarship since her dad is no longer the school exterminator. But guys, if you win the talent show, you can get a scholarship. So she decides to enter the talent show. Chloe and Zoe find out Nikki entered the talent show without them, and they're under the impression that like she didn't want them in her group. So they're both mad at her, and they stay with Mackenzie. Nikki forms a band without the girls, and she's not really sure what to name her band name. That is an important detail that I am telling you. Later on in the book, Mackenzie shows people the video of Nikki and Brianna dancing at Queasy Cheesy, and she starts like being a bitch. That's her thing though. She starts being a bitch to Nikki like in front of everyone, and Chloe and Zoe see this and they leave her dance group. I don't know why that's what it took when it's very known information that Mackenzie and Nikki do not like each other. Nikki forgives them like almost immediately, and they join her band, and the band is called Dorkalicious now. They've come up with a name. Day before the Who am I? The day before the talent show arrives, and they're doing rehearsals, and the stage manager calls up every single act except for Dorkalicious. So they tell the stage manager their band name, and the stage manager does not see them, so they're not allowed to participate in the talent show. On the talent sheet, Nikki had as the band name, actually, I'm not really sure yet, because she was because she was still deciding what she wanted the band name to be. She gets the idea that she's gonna tell the stage manager, that's actually our name, and they participate in the talent show. They don't end up winning the talent show, so no scholarship for Nikki. But Mackenzie lets it slip that she knows that Nikki got a tuition bill in the mail from the school. And Nikki puts the two and two together. She's like, how do you know I got a tuition bill? And she ends up finding out that Mackenzie and Jessica sent a fake tuition bill to Nikki's address so that she could be like, yo, I can't afford this shit anymore. I'm dropping out. I'm transferring. This is my favorite out of the bunch. This was my favorite book from the 4 that I had. This is the most realistic book out of the 3 so far, in my opinion, because I can actually see these things happening to a person in middle school. I can see the shit with Chloe and Zoe happening too, because middle schoolers are shallow. They're shallow. I'm keeping all of my thoughts short for now. On to day 2. I don't want to hear anybody being like, I could have done this so easily. I don't care. I don't care. I've been having a fine time locking in. I've been locked in. It was getting increasingly more difficult to want to focus on the books that I was reading, especially since they were this dumb. I decided that maybe some Minecraft music would help, and before I started the next book, I took a nice little break and gazed out the window. Oh my gosh, dude. So, I've read 6 books. I am 40% of the way through. I am losing my mind a little bit. Tales of a Not So Graceful Ice Princess. This book centers around an ice skating competition, and in my opinion, this is the first book that I feel like depicts Mackenzie as like an actual villain, an actual antagonist. In the first 2 books, yeah, she'd say some offhand, like snarky shit to Nikki. In the 3rd book, she sent her a fake tuition bill, but in this book, this bitch is diabolical. Again, this is based on an ice skating competition, and Nikki wants to join it. Guess who else is joining it? Mackenzie. By joining said competition, you can help raise money for a charity, and Nikki joins the competition because you get an automatic A in your PE class if you're doing the competition or running into a problem already. Nikki doesn't know how to ice skate. She has no idea how to ice skate. She sucks. Her, Chloe, and Zoe also can't find a charity to skate for, but things are always working out for Nikki. Brandon actually starts telling her about an animal shelter who is probably gonna close down because the owner's husband broke his leg and he has to be in the hospital for 2 months. After school, Nikki goes to the animal shelter and she's like, hey, so there's this like charity ice skating competition and I was wondering if I could like skate for you guys. And the woman starts crying and she's like, oh, thank you so much. This means so much to me, especially to my grandson. You know, his parents passed a few years back. He's been through so much. This means so much to me. Nikki's feeling very proud of herself, and as she's walking out of the animal shelter, she looks and she sees the grandson in the back playing with all the dogs. She recognizes him. It's Brandon. So Nikki is now determined to ice skate. She doesn't know how to ice skate though. She has no idea. So now I'm skipping. It's the day of the competition, and Nikki, Chloe, and Zoe, they have their costumes picked out. They're ready to go. Mackenzie actually compliments their costumes, which like, sus. Later on, when it's time for them to change, their costumes are gone and they're replaced by clown costumes. Then a little bit later, they get a note and they're like, hey, like I found your costumes in this room or whatever, go get them. They go try to get their costumes from the room, but they get locked in. So Nikki immediately suspects Mackenzie. She thinks she did it, but she just can't prove it. Now, luckily, because everything works out for Nikki, Brandon and Brianna, that's how I'm pronouncing Brianna's name from now on. I'm done doing this little runaround. Anyway, they find her in the closet, they have their clown costumes on, and then they go and perform. Again, Nikki doesn't know how to ice skate. Chloe and Zoe do, but Nikki doesn't. Now, since they're wearing their clown costumes, when Nikki falls down, the crowd thinks it's like a bit. So they all lean into it, and they actually end up winning. They end up winning the ice skating competition, and they get $10,000 for the animal shelter, which is called Fuzzy Friends. Mackenzie is a bitch. Locking people in rooms is diabolical. That being said, this is my least favorite out of the books that I have read today. Tales from a Not So Smart Miss Know-It-All. Okay, so Nikki gets invited to Brandon's birthday party. If I don't say it now, I will forget. So Nikki, Chloe, and Zoe, they toilet paper Mackenzie's house. They hear somebody coming out the door, so they jump in her bushes. And Mackenzie sees them, and at first Mackenzie's like, why are you guys here? You're trying to take the toilet paper off because, like, you guys don't want me to know that Brandon did this because he likes me so much, which doesn't make any sense. Eventually Mackenzie drops this whole act because she knows Nikki, Chloe, and Zoe toilet papered her house, and she threatens Nikki, and she's like, if you don't get me an invite to Brandon's party, I'm gonna tell Principal Winston that you toilet papered my house, and you're gonna get suspended. So now Nikki is kind of losing her mind because she doesn't want to seem like Mackenzie's puppet to Brandon and get an invitation for her, but she also doesn't want to get suspended, doesn't want to get expelled, doesn't want to get detention. She's stuck. But Mackenzie also threatens to write about Nikki in the school paper. So in an effort to stop that from happening, Nikki joins the school paper, but after she didn't get, like, selected for a job, gets placed in charge of the advice column, and she writes under a pseudonym called Miss Know-It-All. And everyone is loving Miss Know-It-All. Everyone's loving the advice column. Mackenzie doesn't write about her in the newspaper, but she does schedule a visit with the principal. Just as they're about to go into the meeting, Marcy, who is another student that's a part of, like, the newspaper staff, she's like, so, like, what do you want to say about everyone talking about how you locked Nikki, Chloe, and Zoe in some room with clown costume before the ice skating competition? And Mackenzie is so distraught by this that she cancels the meeting with the principal, probably wondering, so how the F does Marcy know? How does Marcy know about this? As we know, Nikki is on the newspaper staff, and she was talking about it with her little sister, or her little sister, like, kind of overheard, and her little sister was like, yo, like, I want to be a journalist now too. So she was writing her own little fake articles and handing them out to people at school. Marcy's little brother brought one home, and it was an article about Mackenzie locking them in a room. Tales from a Not So Happy Heartbreaker. This is my favorite from the bunch. So clearly this book centers around Valentine's Day, and there is the Valentine's Day sweetheart dance, and it's girls ask guys. So obviously Nikki wants to ask Brandon, but even if the signs are, like, so clear that Brandon likes Nikki, like, chooses to ignore the signs, and she's like, bro, what if Brandon doesn't like me though? Like, what if he thinks I'm some weirdo? Anyway, Brianna takes an embarrassing picture of Nikki and sends it to everyone in her contacts, and everyone in her contacts is Chloe, Zoe, and Brandon. I said earlier, even if the signs were so clear that Brandon likes Nikki, Nikki chooses to ignore them. However, Brandon is acting, like, a little bit weird now. He's sending Nikki some pretty backhanded shit, like, I was at Fuzzy Friends and I was bathing this smelly ass, hairy ass dog, and it reminded me of you. He keeps canceling plans with Nikki, and Nikki attempted to confront him about canceling plans, and he kind of just, like, brushed it off and walked away. So things aren't good. Some girls are campaigning to be Sweetheart Princess, which is basically, like, the queen of the dance. One day, Nikki sees that embarrassing picture that Brianna took of her all over the walls at school. She thinks Mackenzie did it, but the picture only went to Brandon, Chloe, and Zoe. Nikki finally gets the balls to ask Brandon to the dance, and he says yes, and then the day of the dance comes, and he's like, yo, like, I'm sick with the flu, I cannot go. And she's like, oh, he's not into me at all. Chloe and Zoe force Nikki to go to the dance anyway, and when Nikki gets there, she sees Brandon and Mackenzie talking. After a little while, Brandon and Nikki, they talk, and turns out Brandon's phone has been missing since the day of his birthday party. It's been missing. He doesn't know where it is. So Mackenzie has his phone. He confronts her about the photo, and Mackenzie's like, I did not do that. It was Brandon. And Brandon, he's acting a little guilty. He's the one that put the photos of her all over the school. That embarrassing photo that Brianna took of her, Brandon put all over the school. This is so stupid. Nikki ends up forgiving Brandon for putting that embarrassing picture all over the school because on the back it says, "She's friendly and funny. Vote Nikki Maxwell, sweetheart princess." Nikki is like, "That's the sweetest thing anyone's ever done for me." They put an embarrassing picture of you all over the school. And not even on the front was it like, "She's friendly and funny." Number one, why even use that picture? Why use that picture of her? Despite me being upset about the way that this book ends, because I think that is the dumbest, I think that is so stupid. This was my favorite out of the bunch that I read today. It's not my favorite overall. I'm saving my final rankings for the very end. So, onward. I was starting to feel the weight of all the books on my mental state, and I wanted to use this day as a break, but I decided against it. I took an extended break and watched the new Smosh Mouth, and then about an hour later, I started the next book. Done. I'm so over this. I thought this was such a silly idea, but then when I was doing it, I was really starting to feel the weight of it on my sanity. I don't want to hear how easily you could have done this. This was hard for me. Tales from a Not-So-Glam TV Star. I know I said the third book was the most realistic, but what I didn't tell y'all was that after the talent show, a talent producer walks up to Nikki after the talent show. He's like, "I just love your band. Like, I love your band so much. I want to have your song professionally recorded." His name is Trevor Chase. That's what this book is about. Her getting famous. So Nikki is finally gonna meet Trevor Chase, and he wants to meet at a Bad Boys concert. Nikki doesn't have tickets to the concert, so Trevor Chase gives Nikki, Chloe, and Zoe backstage passes. And when they get to the arena, they see Mackenzie there, and she's like, "I have front row tickets." And the girls are like, "I got backstage passes." Mackenzie's so like taken aback by this that she spills her water on Chloe. While this whole thing is transpiring, she actually steals the backstage passes from Nikki's purse, so they cannot get in. They actually pretend to be backup dancers and they sneak backstage, and when they get backstage, they see Mackenzie, Jessica, and Jennifer pretending to be Nikki, Chloe, and Zoe. Nikki, Chloe, and Zoe end up getting arrested for sneaking backstage, and then Trevor Chase sees them and he's just like, "Just let them go." Nikki takes 60 pages to explain that whole situation. You see how quickly I was able to sum that up for you? So finally, the whole band is meeting with Trevor Chase, and he's like, "Yo, I'm gonna have your song recorded, and then you're gonna have a listening party, your song's gonna get released, and then, Nikki, you're getting your own reality show." Also, Trevor Chase tells them that their band is gonna open for Bad Boys when they come to their city again. So while the band's like preparing to get like really good, they can't find a choreographer. They're calling around, and Trevor Chase calls Mackenzie, so Mackenzie ends up as their choreographer. Now I bet you're wondering how Nikki's reality show's going. It's going so great, but her and Brandon are going through a little bit of a rough patch. So Brandon wants to write about Nikki for his scholarship project so he can stay at the school, but Nikki's just so busy with everything that every single time her and Brandon are supposed to meet up about it, she kind of like isn't there. Mackenzie ends up telling the production crew that Nikki's like in a love triangle and that's why she's so like weird right now. So the production crew is trying to make it seem like Brandon is like some asshole, and Nikki's not really rocking with that, so she's like, maybe I shouldn't have a reality TV show. So now it's their listening party, and they have their CDs and they're selling them for charity. However, when they open the boxes, there's no CDs in there. Then Nikki gets the bright idea to make a kissing booth, and Brandon kisses Nikki. And that's the end of the book. Tales from a Not So Happily Ever After. This entire book is based off of one day in Nikki's life, which begs the question, why do you write like you're running out of time? So when Nikki's getting ready for school, she sees her sister Brianna making a disgusting peanut butter, jelly, and pickle sandwich, and they start to like argue about it. Nikki calls it disgusting, and then somehow it ends up on the front of her sweater, but she only notices when she gets to school. In Nikki's English class, her English teacher gives them an assignment to write creatively about fairy tales. And Nikki's like daydreaming about it and thinking over and over again, But by the time class ends, she doesn't have anything written down. So then she goes to gym class. While playing dodgeball, Mackenzie hits Nikki right in the face with a ball, and Nikki goes unconscious. When she wakes up, she's in this fantasy world where everyone is covered in like junk food. Brianna appears in Nikki's fantasy land as a fairy, and Nikki's like, bro, like, I want to go home. And Brianna tells her to find the Wizard of Oz. While she's trying to find the Wizard of Oz, she meets Goldilocks, and she lives through like that whole fairy tale with the bears and the porridge. She also meets Little Red Riding Hood. She witnesses the grandma as the wolf. The three of them have a tea party together. Literally whatever fairy tale you can think of, Nikki like experiences it. Nikki eventually gets hit in the head in her fantasy land, and that brings her back to the real world. Mackenzie gets detention for hitting Nikki in the face with a ball. And do you remember that sandwich I was telling you about earlier? Nikki gets home from school and Brianna made her the sandwich, and Nikki tries it and she ends up liking it. Does that remind you of a story by any chance? Least favorite from today. Tales of a not so dorky drama queen. So while Nikki's in class, she notices a big stink bug in Mackenzie's hair, and she takes it out and removes it. But Mackenzie sees the stink bug and she ends up vomiting in front of she ends up throwing up in front of the whole class. This whole book is pretty much just Mackenzie writing in it because she stole Nikki's diary, although that's not how she words it. While Nikki was walking down the hall, she accidentally left her locker open, and she took the book from the locker because she didn't want anybody stealing it and having everybody in the school read it. Anyway, Mackenzie goes to lunch and she sees everyone laughing at the video of her with the stink bug in her hair, and she's like, I want to transfer schools. Her parents agree to let her transfer schools, and while the movers are moving all of her shit from the school or whatever, one of the boxes falls and the diary slips out of it, and Nikki finds her diary. It was missing for 2 weeks, by the way. So Nikki reads what all Mackenzie wrote in her diary, and she's like, you know, her life isn't as perfect as I thought it was. Clearly, I'm not talking about what Mackenzie wrote because there's nothing of significance there. The only thing that's like not perfect is that she has an annoying little sister too. And then the book ends after Brandon asks to hang out with Nikki. This was my least favorite bunch so far. This was my favorite from the bunch, but this altogether, my least favorite. On to day 4. I am 80% of the way through with Dork Diaries. Tales from a not so perfect pet sitter. So Mackenzie left and everyone is like obsessed with that bitch. In the words of Regina George from Mean Girls, the musical on Broadway, the whole school humps her leg. The whole school humps her leg. So Nikki and Brandon go to Fuzzy Friends, and when they get to Fuzzy Friends, they see a box that says for Holly and they see a dog. Who the F is Holly? Holly's the dog. So what was left for Holly? 7 puppies were left for Holly. But guys, we've run into a conflict. Fuzzy Friends cannot take in any of the dogs because they're at capacity. So they come up with a plan, and their plan is to alternate between who washes the dogs until Sunday when Fuzzy Friends isn't at capacity anymore. But guys, Nikki's mom will not let her keep the dog at home. But what does Nikki do? She brings them home anyway. She hides 8 dogs in her room. The next day, Nikki puts all the dogs in a crate, puts a blanket over it, puts it in a wagon, and then puts a sign on it that says books for library. And then she brings it into the school. Now, I'm not sure if you guys have ever owned a dog before, but puppies aren't quiet, especially when you put them in a crate. I have 2 dogs, but what do I know, guys? What do I know?
What do I know?
Nikki decides the best idea is to hide the dogs in Principal Winston's office because he's going to be out for the whole day for a meeting. And Marcy, remember that girl? She was on the newspaper staff. Yeah, she's the office assistant. Marcy opens the dog cage and then Principal Winston gets back. And then Brandon's friend Max comes in and he's like, oh, those are for my science project. Sorry. And they're all fine. They all end up fine. Anyway, Nikki's family eventually decides to keep one of the puppies and they name it Daisy. And then Nikki gets an email from Principal Winston. The email states that she has to participate in Student Exchange Week and she is going to be attending Northampton Hills International Academy. That's where Mackenzie goes. And that's the end of the book. Tales from a Not So Friendly Frenemy. This book is about Nikki having to go to Mackenzie's school. So Nikki gets an A on her French report and her teacher says, "Hey, I think you'd be a great fit for an all expenses paid trip to Paris. But the trip is through Northampton Hills." And Nikki's like, "I'm about to go there for my freaking student exchange week." So instead of her trying to find a way out of going to Northampton Hills, she ends up going so she can go to Paris. So Nikki gets to Northampton Hills, and when she gets there, her student guide is Tiffany. Tiffany is kind of like Mackenzie. Speaking of Mackenzie, she told everyone at Northampton Hills that she transferred there because she was getting bullied by Nikki, and Tiffany unfriends her. Anyway, Nikki runs into Mackenzie, and Mackenzie kind of stole Nikki's entire identity by saying, like, "I have a band, and like, I had an advice column in the school paper, and like, I volunteer at Fuzzy Friends all the time." And then they start to like argue about it. Tiffany records it, and then she's like, "You guys will never be Queen Bee. You can never take my spot." No one was even asking for it. The next day, Mackenzie and Nikki meet up, and Mackenzie tells Nikki why she stole her identity. I keep wording it like that, but how funny would it be if like she like fully took like her social security card? That's not, it's funny to me. So when Mackenzie came to Northampton Hills, no one really liked her or really found her interesting. And then she overheard some students talking about Trevor Chase and 15 Minutes of Fame, which is a show that he works on, I guess. And Nikki brought up, "I know Trevor Chase, he saw my band and like, he thinks we're really cool. And so like, I work with him now." And everyone thought that was pretty cool. So now they like Mackenzie. And the more Mackenzie started talking about Nikki's life, the more everyone liked Mackenzie. Her and Mackenzie form a short-lived alliance, and her final day at Northampton Hills arrives. Nikki tries to go to her locker, but there's like a whole group of people standing and looking at another locker. And the locker says Bug Girl on it. And I don't know if you remember, but Nikki's dad is an exterminator. Mackenzie stole Nikki's identity. It's Mackenzie's locker. Mackenzie thinks Nikki did this, but Tiffany did, which I don't know how Tiffany knows about Nikki and the bugs. When Nikki gets back to Westchester Country Day, she schedules a meeting with Principal Winston and Nikki, which I don't know how that's possible if she doesn't go there anymore. But do you happen to remember Mackenzie having a bug in her hair and Nikki picking it out, and then Mackenzie ended up vomiting in front of the whole class? That was recorded, and then Mackenzie posted it to YouTube as Nikki. She was gonna have Nikki expelled for cyberbullying until a journalist from Teen TV shows up to the school and wants to interview Nikki for having the best viral video. What are we talking about anymore? Since Mackenzie actually uploaded it as Nikki, she's not gonna let Nikki have all that fame. So she actually admits to her, posting it as Nikki. Anyway, and then after that, she declares that she's coming back to Westchester Country Day. Tales from a Not So Secret Crush Catastrophe. So Nikki ends up as a student guide for Student Exchange Week for a guy named Andre, and Andre goes to Northampton Hills. So, can we think of any conflict that might happen? Brandon gets jealous. Nikki and Andre start getting along really well because they just both love art. And Nikki says that she feels nervous around Andre and she doesn't know why. Girl, be for real. Nikki starts seeing Photoshop pictures of her and Andre on social media, and then 2 days later, she sees a photo of the both of them captioned, "Andre and Nikki ditched school to hang out." The comments under that post are like pretty mean. Mackenzie ends up showing these photos to Brandon, and Brandon starts acting like all sad. First of all, you haven't asked her out yet, but you like her just so much. You've liked her since the beginning of the year. Ask her out already, buddy. I'm skipping to the end now because a lot of this book is filler. Andre and Brandon end up at Queasy Cheesy together and they start arguing. And then Chloe and Zoe show up, sit Andre down, and they interrogate him about the photoshopped pictures and a picture of him, Mackenzie, and Tiffany at a bakery. Now Nikki, Chloe, and Zoe are under the impression that they've all teamed up and are like trying to attack Nikki. And then Mackenzie and Tiffany run into Queasy Cheesy and they accuse Andre of stealing Tiffany's phone. He admits to stealing it, but he says he did it because he overheard them talking about the mean comments and the Photoshop pictures, so he stole Tiffany's phone for evidence. Tiffany tells him, "You're not gonna get away with this, bro. I'm telling mom." Mom. And Andre says, "No, I'm telling mom." In the book, Zoe interrupts them and she says, and I quote, "Tiffany, I'ma let you finish," she said like that famous rapper. Anyway, yeah, Andre and Tiffany are siblings, and then everyone ends up okay at the end. Moving on to day 5, the final day. Although this was definitely the most mentally draining thing I've ever put myself through besides being a pre-law student, this was kind of a bittersweet moment for me, but I was done reliving my childhood. Dork Diaries is one of the pieces of my childhood that I look back on very fondly. If I'm being honest, I think I destroyed it for myself a little bit. If the words Dork Diaries are ever muttered near me ever again, I'm decking somebody in the face. I'm so happy to finally be done. Tales from a Not So Happy Birthday. This book is about Nikki and her birthday. Her birthday is June 28th, and in my brain, it makes so much sense that she's a Cancer. I am not heavily into astrology, but my older sister is a Cancer, and she doesn't stop talking. So Nikki wants to throw a really cool island luau birthday party, and she tells her mom that she needs $500 for it. Her mom says no, but she offers $100, and Nikki says she can't throw her party with that small of a budget. So she cancels it. Guys, Nikki, Chloe, and Zoe already made the invitations and they already got sent out. So they sneak into the post office and they try to steal the invitations back. But they can't. They don't. So now Nikki ends up having to babysit Brianna, and while she's watching TV, she notices that her house is quiet. A little too quiet. She looks around for her. She can't find her. She finds her at the dog park selling dog treats for $5 each, and she like sells out. She sells out of her supply. People are begging for more. They're fiending for more. So Brianna has made a lot of money from selling these dog treats. When she sells out, she tells all the people to visit her website to order them. Brianna doesn't have a website, so when they get home, she asks Nikki to help her, and if Nikki helps her, she's gonna pay her. Nikki gets paid, she buys all her party supplies, and then she has this big luau party. Tales from a Not So Best Friend Forever. This book is about them going on tour, and a lot of this book is filler. Halfway through the book is when they are finally on tour with Bad Boys. So before their flight, their social media manager, Victoria Steele, tells them that it's gonna be so much work keeping up with their social media campaign, so she hires a social media intern. Do you want to guess who she picks? She picks Mackenzie, of course. So they fly to Chicago, they get to their hotel, and then Nikki, Chloe, and Zoe go downstairs, and Trevor Chase is like, "Yo, do you guys want to meet Bad Boys by any chance?" When they get in the room with Bad Boys, they're all like insulting each other. So they clearly don't get along. They meet Nikki, Chloe, and Zoe, and one of the Bad Boys members starts flirting with Chloe. Look, I have no idea how old the Bad Boys are, but Nikki makes it seem like they're like so much older than them. Maybe like 18. Chloe is 14. So the day of their concert comes, and I have a lot of thoughts. How many songs does actually I'm not really sure yet have? How many songs do they have? They have one original song. So what they do is they go on stage, they play We Will Rock You by Queen, Don't Stop Believin' by Journey, and then their original song. And the crowd loses their shit. That's all they play. They play 3 songs. I don't count like this. After they performed, their band was trending on social media. Now they're supposed to play in New York City, and they learn that the whole concert is going to be broadcasted on national television, and Nikki's family is planning to come to the show. But before sound check, they look for Bad Boys, and they're all gone. They eventually text Trevor Chase and let them know, hey, like, we're good, we just needed a break. They cancel I guess they rescheduled the rest of their tour until they're better. I had to buy the ebook because none of the books would get to my house on time. So, Tales from a Not So Posh Paris Adventure. Nikki and her band play at a festival, and Nikki falls on stage, and it was recorded. Anyway, this book is about Nikki going to Paris, but not for that French trip I was telling you about. Trevor Chase books an all expenses paid trip to Paris to show his gratitude. While they're in Paris, they're gonna be photographed so they can be on the cover of a magazine. Nikki goes to a coffee shop and she tries to order coffee, but she says to the barista in French, "Do you want to smell my feet?" But her French is not very good. Brandon invites Nikki for ice cream, and then they meet the new social media intern, which is Andre. Brandon gets upset and pissy about Andre being there, and he's all jealous or whatever. I'm so sick of this. Now Mackenzie sees a long line of people waiting outside of a building, and she thinks it's for a store. When they get to the front, they pay for 2 tickets for the store, I guess. And when they go inside, they're in the catacombs. Now it's the day of their photo shoot for the most popular magazine in France called Ooh La La Chic. They fly back home and Nikki and Brandon talk, and Nikki explains how Andre is just a friend and everything ends up fine. Upon rereading, I do want to say that I think I started to dislike and loathe reading these books because of how unrealistic they were starting to turn. Part of the charm of the book series was it's just a girl in middle school and she's like exceptionally normal. I feel like the plot was lost a little bit. And part of the reason why I liked the book so much as a kid was that I felt like I could see myself in Nikki. Like I was an annoying kid. Even when I came back to the series, I still felt that little feeling like, damn, this girl was me. Like I feel like I could still see some of me in Nikki, but that was completely lost when she got famous. Like, what are we even talking about anymore? You can make a middle schooler's life interesting without them having to be famous and getting some big record deal and going on tour. Like, you can make a middle schooler's life interesting without doing all of that. I think I wouldn't have as much of a problem with that if Nikki had previously expressed, like, a love for singing or something like that. So when she joins a band and she's a singer or whatever, it kind of felt like it was just thrown in there. Nikki had never expressed like a want to sing until she had to join the talent show. She had to join the talent show because she thought she was going to lose her scholarship. And I understand that you can find your passion in like an odd way, but I just don't get it. Anyway, here are my final rankings for all of the books. I feel like a lot of my feelings have changed about some of these books, knowing like how much I don't like the end of the series. I'm gonna put this here. Well, to be honest, I don't think I would read any of these again, but if I don't know. Actually, I'm gonna change my ranking on this because the end of the book, I don't like how it ends. Okay. This is kind of hard. I don't want to put all of these and pack it up because they have their moments a little bit. Definitely, I don't like that book. This one, and it was all right. We got Not So Popular Party Girl, Not So Graceful Ice Princess, Not So Smart Miss Know-It-All, Not So Friendly Frenemy, Not So Fabulous Life, Not So Dorky Drama Queen, Not So Happy Heartbreaker, Not So Talented Pop Star, Not So Something Pet Sitter, Not So Happy Birthday, Not So Something Crush Catastrophe, Not So Happily Ever After, Not So Posh Paris Adventure, Not So Best Friend Forever, and Not So Glam TV Star. This is my final ranking of the Dork Diaries books. I want to say, if you watch this all the way through, thank you! This is the longest video I've ever done, and I've been wanting to do it for a hot second, but I've been going back and forth trying to decide if I should or not. I did have a lot of fun with this. I'm kind of a little bit proud of how everything turned out, so it means a lot that you wanted to watch it all the way through, or you hated it from the beginning and you wanted to see how bad it got. Either way, thanks for watching. Anyway, that's it. Stop looking at me.